Hello everybody and welcome to a new segment on my channel, True Horror. I've been asked over the years by many people to start focusing on more true horror stories, and I absolutely agree. Sometimes it is more interesting to listen to a story that is true versus something that was written down. So I'm going to start focusing more on that in the future, starting with this episode here. This case is an unsolved murder, and I find those to be particularly interesting because not only was it one person who was unfairly taken away, but it was a whole family of people. The story is infamous, it's a tragic tale, and I think everybody should know it at least happened so that we can all be aware that these people existed and their lives were cut short in a very unfair manner. So without any further ado, let's get into what happened to the Dardeen family. On November 18th, 1987, a horrific discovery would shock the small town of Ena, Illinois. A brutal family murder that to this day has nobody behind bars for it. A story that plagues a county that was victim to 15 murders in those 2 years, which had people scared and the police confused. Keith Dardeen had moved into a trailer in Ena, Illinois after completing his training as a treatment plant operator at the Wren Lake Water Conservancy District's nearby facility. Elaine Dardeen had moved there later with their 2-year-old son Peter and taken up work at an office supply store in Mount Vernon. They had been renting the land that the trailer sat on from a nearby farming couple. When not working, the two were part of a musical ensemble at a small Baptist church in the nearby village. Keith was lead singer and Elaine was on piano. All in all, they just sounded like a nice small-town family just trying to get by doing their best. In 1987, Elaine had become pregnant with the couple's second child, and they decided they would name it Ian or Casey, depending on the gender. The new addition to the family had the two thinking they should move out of that town, and later they put their trailer up for sale. If only they had sold it sooner, for the baby wasn't the only reason that Keith wanted to move. He had told his mother that he had regretted moving to Ena, as the place had become a little too violent over the years. That was a bit of an understatement, because this is when Jefferson County was victim to the 15 murders over 2 years, starting with Thomas Odell, a teenager who killed his parents and 3 siblings. This was just one of the few Jefferson County killers convicted in those 2 years. Residents were getting scared and paranoid. Even Keith, who wanted nothing more than to protect his family, said that he had to turn somebody away who just wanted to use their phone. If only his protection could predict and stop what happened to them next. On the 18th, Keith didn't show up to work, and it wasn't really like him. He wasn't known for being unreliable at work, and he wouldn't not show up without giving a call. His supervisor tried calling his home, but he wasn't getting any answer, so he opted to call his parents, who both had no idea where their son could have been. So his dad opted to help the police out. He'd show him to the trailer and give him a spare key to let him inside, and what they discovered was a very horrific scene. Elaine, along with Keith's son, had both been beaten to death with a baseball bat that was given to Peter from his dad earlier that year as a birthday gift. And the brutality didn't stop there. Elaine had gone into labor from the beatings, and the killer, or killers, didn't show any mercy on the unborn child. The 3 were discovered tucked into the same bed, all deceased, and Elaine had been bound and gagged with duct tape. Initially, the police suspected that Keith was responsible for the murders since he or his car weren't present at the crime scene, but their suspicions were laid to rest the next day when his body was found in a nearby field by a group of hunters. He'd been shot 3 times and his genitals removed. Police found Keith's car outside of a police department in the nearby town of Benton, about 11 miles away from his home. Blood on the inside indicated that this was the scene of his murder. The killings were brutal, detailed, and passionate. Who would have such hatred, such a vendetta for this family, that they would do such horrible things to them? Well, that's where this case becomes kind of frustrating, because to this day, no one's to blame. The local police joined forces with the Illinois State Police. A total of 30 detectives were working full-time, following leads and interviewing over 100 people, but none of the information they found was helpful. Suspects were questioned and cleared, interviews with locals hit dead ends. Anybody who knew the family had nothing bad to say about them. Police had a hard time figuring out whether it was one or multiple people to blame for this, for the discovered times of death, the location of Keith's body, and the meticulous amount of time spent tucking the three into bed suggested there was no sense of urgency. The reason behind the killings were also unknown, for there was nothing stolen from the trailer, the back door was open so there was no forced entry, no sexual abuse had occurred to any of the family members, and there was no extramarital incidences involving Keith or Elaine. However, despite the lack of reasoning, the Jefferson County coroner didn't believe that the Dardeens were randomly chosen. This crime looked personal. The brutality displayed that. The police had exhausted all their resources, and after a while, unfortunately, they had to move on. Even two FBI profilers who took a look at the case could only make mere suggestions as to what happened and who was to blame. Well, they had all but given up. Keith's mother was persistent, and throughout the 90s, she continued to call up the one detective still assigned to the case and offer him new leads. She even tried to get the case spread on Oprah, but they turned her down, saying that the situation was too brutal for daytime television. America's Most Wanted took up the case, but they unfortunately gained no new leads. This case is the definition of inhumane behavior. Nothing that this family did suggested that they provoked or deserved anything that happened to them. Their killer or killers got away scot-free and never paid for taking away 4 innocent people. It's a mess of frustration and heartlessness, but maybe one day we'll find the answers. Thank you so much for your time. If you have any unsolved murders or mysteries you want me to cover, let me know in the comments or DM me on Twitter. That's actually the best way you can contact me. More true horror is on the horizon, so stay tuned. And as always, be well.